in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, India and China were being seen as two rising giants. We were compared with China all the time. Somehow it seems that in the last 2 decades, they have made a quantum leap over there, and we are still sort of catching up in a way. What changed so drastically?
No, I think Chinese did that with the American. We have to take a page out of their book and do to China what the Chinese did to the Americans.
大家好，我是老吴。今天想和大家分享一段印度顶级智库观察家研究基金会主席萨米尔萨兰的最新访谈。这段访谈时间挺长，我专门挑出了和我们中国最相关的那一部分。在这段访谈中，他先是重新定义了印度在新时代的外交策略，一种升级版的不结盟策略。接着坦率地回顾了过去20-30年印度是如何被中国远远甩在后面的。最后也是最关键的，他讲到了印度应该如何和中国打交道。萨兰的观点非常务实，他认为印度的崛起离不开中国，但这种离不开并不是简单的依附，而是要有一套非常精明的策略。他甚至直接指出，印度要学习中国当年对付美国的方式来和今天的中国打交道。那么具体是一套什么样的策略，我们来看看他是怎么说的。
If the point is that India needs to be engaging with a much wider constituency than just the US, it's a fair point. But I don't think any Indian Prime Minister or any Indian Foreign Minister has not stated this particular objective. India has never aligned itself in a traditional sense to a single actor, right? We have, through our history, worked with different actors in different sectors at different times for different purposes. And that shall remain the India story. Big countries don't, big countries are promiscuous. Let me just put it this way. America has literally funded every side of every conflict in the last 70 to 80 years. In any geography of the world.
It's an accurate statement. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It would be a fair statement to make. We have to create our engagement capabilities that allow us to be in many ways in touch with and perhaps even sometimes intimate with a large number of countries and communities that at a particular moment of time may not suit our purpose. We also have to deal with those who may not serve our purpose today, but maybe in 5 to 7 to 10 years could become very important for our country's interests, right?
Yes.
Now, having said that, is non-alignment being reverted to? I think that's for the question you asked. Non-alignment in a 21st century avatar is being reverted to. And I think Shashi Tharoor has called it multi-alignment. Jaishankar has called it multi-alignment. There are a number of folks
Did we ever give it up?
I don't think we've ever shared that. So I think the idea that we ever moved away from it was rubbish, because our foreign policy always followed that idea of having this approach of autonomy inbuilt by design, right? And we have only upgraded the operating system. We haven't discarded the mainframe. The mainframe remains the same. The operating system has been upgraded for the 21st century. And I think in some ways, I said it once, that the Nehruvian non-alignment was apt and appropriate in 1950. The 21st century non-alignment has a very different texture and format, and both are related through evolution. They are not disruptions of India's approach to internationalism.
And this reaching out to Indonesia is probably part of that extension too.
In Indonesia, interestingly, is one of our oldest
that's what I'm saying.
co-travelers, right? It started there,
Yeah.
right? In some ways,
Yes.
it started there. But you are going to see this. What was the theme of Raisina this year? Kala Chakra. You're going to see the
turning of time.
the turning of time, or the progressive turning of time.
In all this, the casualty, BRICS, will it be a casualty?
I am of the view that every group will serve us at some moment in our foreign policy journey. If today China is able to benefit from a large number of these plurilateral groups because they are $20 trillion or thereabouts, and because they have the surpluses and the capital to deploy. At some point, we will require these same groups. China was able to, in 2008, I repeat this many times because it's important. In 2008, China was $4 trillion, $2,600 per capita income. In the next 10 years, it became the single largest trading partner for 100 countries. My point is that as we move to 10 trillion, we are going to become consequential for a very large number of countries. Where are the arrangements, institutions and architectures to engage with these large number of countries? You will require all sorts of groups through which you could become development partners, infrastructure partners, technology partners, UPI partners, all sorts of DPI partners, all sorts of partnerships would be based on how many of these clubs, cohorts, multilateral and plurilateral groups you are able to incubate. So, yes, Trump has taken a particular fondness for BRICS, but I think BRICS will outlast Trump.
I'm glad you brought about China. Samir, tell me about this. In the mid 2000s, late 2000s, India and China were being seen as two rising giants. We were compared with China all the time. Somehow it seems that in the last 2 decades, they have made a quantum leap over there, and we are still sort of catching up in a way. What changed so drastically?
No, I think that departure happened turn of the century, right? I think in the 90s, the Chinese really left us far behind, and by the time the century changed, they were on a different trajectory. What happened was that they were able to do what we are doing now then, which is getting infrastructure right, investing in ports, investing in roads, investing in colleges and schools. You saw our QS ranking recently, right? More universities are now
finally
featuring.
rising.
Finally.
Yeah.
That was happening in China 20 years ago.
Of course.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that they were building social infrastructure, physical infrastructure, connectivity, and
simultaneously,
at the same time. So I think, like I said, in 2008 they were exactly where we are today. So we are 16 to 17 years displaced, and that 16 to 17 years has its provenance in the 80s and 90s. What we did then cost us a decade and a half of setbacks in relative terms, right? We were still growing, by the way, so it's not as if we did not. But that is where they really took a long leap, and were able to scale the heights that they are in. And by the way, we must appreciate what they did for their own country, right? Now, of course, there is a difference in political systems and decision making and the concentration that the Communist Party, concentration of power that the Communist Party enjoys. And all that is true. But I think our story has a texture and a certain element of romance which is unique. We are going to be the first non-Western country where we are going to establish that through a loud, sometimes rowdy democracy, we can still grow and we can still build and we can still deliver. So I think what we will do would be in many ways the largest service to a liberal, plural, inclusive political system, because the Western models have not been able to do that.
And kind of a blueprint for young democracies too, right? Younger democracies.
I think blueprint for the global south, as it were, and I'm using that term very broadly, which includes democracies that are experimenting with their future in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. So I think an Indian story has a different texture. We have to catch up, and we have to work very hard to make this story even more appealing and even more compelling for others. End of the day, our success will matter, because unless we succeed, folks are going to believe that this model is problematic. And I think our success continues to strengthen the model that we are following.
So our success, does it mean detrimental technology? Does it mean a detrimental framework for our neighbors, minus Pakistan? Put the Pakistan side. What does it mean for our neighbors? Does it make Nepal uncomfortable with it? Maldives, Prime Minister going to Maldives, it did make at one point of time, but now he seems to be okay with India rising. And how does our neighborhood see us now?
देखिए, neighborhoods are always complicated relationships, especially when one country is very large in that particular neighborhood. You are never going to have very linear or predictable relationships in your neighborhood. We will have to continue to have multiple textures to our foreign policy, and one of them will have to be specially tailored for the neighborhood. And that will have to be more empathetic. That will have to give them far more leeway than we would give to many others.
Okay.
That would have to be able to accept far more criticism than we would allow others to inflict on us. We would have to have a big heart when you are a big country in a neighborhood like ours. So, and by the way, we do that sometimes, and we get it right
just
sometimes.
Couple of days back, right? 2 days back,
Correct.
where we sent burn specialist, yesterday
Bangladesh, yeah.
to Bangladesh.
But more
Despite what's
importantly,
happening.
Irrespective of we have to work with the people of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll have to cast aside our view of their politics.
Sure.
Right? And in that sense, we'll have to invest.
Maldives model in a way. The way we dealt with Maldives.
I think Sri Lanka, Maldives,
Yeah.
by the way, even Bangladesh more recently.
Yeah.
Right? Nepal, despite all things that have happened in the last 2 decades, I think our focus on that relationship has remained fairly robust, right? So I think the neighborhood would require India to be conscious of the fact that it is very large and it could intimidate people by some of the pronouncements and some of its own loud politics that comes out of our capitals. And we would have to be conscious of engaging with the individuals there. We can't treat them as monolithic political units. We would have to have a diversity of engagement with them. For example, we would have to deal with parties that are opposed to us as well in each of those countries.
Yeah.
We should build deep inroads into those parties. In fact, those who don't like us, we should be doubling down and deepening our engagement with them. The point here is that no big country in any neighborhood has been able to get it absolutely right. Right? You look at the Americans and the Mexicans and the Canadians, for example. They
They were going to be the 51st state as recently.
look, I don't think anyone is going to be the state, but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So they will. Big countries in a neighborhood will always have to work extra hard to sustain relationships.
Strategic caution, right? The idea of that with China, how to move forward. Now, how do you sort of divorce our foreign policy with the realities of the ground when it comes to China? When you see Chinese missiles flying across the borders from Pakistan, but at the same time we have to still engage with our neighbor to the north. How does South Bloc deal with these sort of contradictions over here?
Look, the point is that Chinese missiles being used by Pakistan should not be seen as a reason for us to be responding to China on that matrix. The China-Pakistan defense relationship is deep. F-16s flying from Pakistan towards India like they did not make us change our assessment of America. The point I'm trying to make here is that defense equipment with certain countries are once available in the inventory of certain countries, make that country the owner of that equipment, hardware, and the actions that they take belong to them, not to the others, right? The challenge here is not about the hardware. The challenge is about the possible potential of collaboration during conflicts. And I think that is what must be prevented. And that is why diplomacy and that is why engagement has to focus on ensuring that this alignment alignment of collaboration during conflict is weakened or perhaps even negated. I think that's what we have to be targeting. The idea that they are selling missiles is not problematic.
How is the messaging from Beijing during Operation Sindoor? How do you
This
read that?
thing that foreign ministry spokesperson's remarks.
No. This is basically I pulled out this is a Chinese handout.
Yeah, that's what.
In the middle of Operation Sindoor, this was what they had said. So
India.
apart from saying that the action was regrettable, they also said that China opposes all forms of terrorism. So it wasn't.
No, Chinese. Look,
it wasn't like that, like a Turkish statement or something. You know,
my point is that let's be very clear. Chinese are friends with Pakistan. Okay, Chinese have a very deep relationship with them. Perhaps they have a near alliance with them as well. A near alliance, right? I don't think we should have any doubts about that. Despite all of that, I still believe there must be a basis for us to continue a negotiation, engagement, outreach with China to solve our bilateral issues and prevent this from becoming a firm alliance. And I think that has to be a international objective.
And the meetings that happened after all this, we've had the defense minister go there, we've had Ajit Doval go there, we've had the foreign minister also go
Which
there.
is right.
Beijing, yeah.
Which is right. So
Yeah.
hence, I'm saying I don't disagree with any of the efforts being made to continue to engage with the dragon. It is unlikely that you are going to be in a world where you both will not have to deal with each other intermittently across domains.
Yeah.
There is no way that you can be $10 trillion as an economy without having a substantial trading relationship with China. You saw that even when we were at the peak of our conflict, and by the way, no one has been more acerbic in my writing on China as I have been. But even during that conflict that happened in the heights of the Himalayas during the pandemic, you saw that in a few years we had significantly grown our trading relationship. So
Though we were banning the apps and stuff.
you saw. So we had by the way, which I believe is pragmatic. We must decide in these 5 or 6 areas we don't want the Chinese. In every other area, let's embrace them. You know, I keep saying this. Political muscularity and economic embrace is fine. One area that we must change, one texture that we must change is the investment landscape. I think they have the trading advantages with China, right? The balance of trade belongs to them, of course, in some sense. The balance of investments must belong to us. You know, what is the sobering impact our relationship will have on the Chinese, but to have say $50-100 billion of their money invested in India's growth story. And I think that is where we need to find ways of encouraging them to become part of the transformations that we are making. And we must find sectors, and there are plenty of them, where they could be significant actors. But this must be done in a calibrated manner through some rational conversations amongst the very wise people of India.
Yeah.
And we must try to make it interesting for China to be invested in a rising India. But by the way, it doesn't mean that we drop up a little muscularity. Let me just tell you this. A good economic relationship between India and China will be based on the fact that China respects that this country has political muscles. So we must continue to spend a large amount of our resources on building the deterrence. Chinese-American trade grew even as China was building capacities to prevent America from being adventurous. So this is something that is absolutely acceptable. You can create capabilities to deter and at the same time roll out the red carpet to have economic engagements. The Chinese did that with the American. We have to take a page out of their book and do to China what the Chinese did to the Americans. Have political muscularity and an economic embrace.
好，萨米尔萨兰的这段访谈就到这里。我觉得他主要讲了2个核心观点。第一，他认为印度将来的外交将是一种更加灵活的多项结盟，印度不会再像过去那样将自己绑定在某一个阵营里边。第二，也是最核心的，他提出了印度将来的对华战略 一方面要大力发展军事，构建对中国的威慑能力，另一方面又要积极拥抱中国的资本和市场，鼓励中国投资来帮助印度发展。我认为站在印度的立场上，这套策略可以说是非常理性务实的选择，既要利用中国的资本和市场来发展自己，又要保持足够的警惕和威慑，防止被中国主导。但是我们站在中国的立场上看，这恰恰就是印度非常精明，甚至可以说是狡猾的地方。我之前就说过，跟印度打交道最好的方式也许就是尽量别打交道。他们今天学习我们的策略，明天就可能利用我们的资本和技术成为我们最棘手的竞争对手。好，今天的分享就到这里，感谢大家收看，咱们下次再见。